There is an animatronic that's found at only one Chuck E. Cheese location in the world. This animatronic is Munch Jr., a character with a really interesting history, so let's talk about it. Although Munch Jr. is a Chuck E. Cheese character, to talk about his history we actually need to go all the way back to when Showbiz Pizza was still up and running. On the Rock-afire Explosion stage, there was a small animatronic that sat on the floor inside of a tree stump called Choo Choo. The Choo Choo animatronic wasn't like the others, which, you know, like sang and danced. This one kind of just bobbed up and down to the beat of the music. Now, obviously, this isn't Munch Jr., but as I'm sure a lot of you know, in the early 90s, Showbiz Pizza actually started getting converted into Chuck E. Cheese, which converted the Rock-afire Explosion band into Munch's Make Believe band, also converting all of the Showbiz Pizza animatronics into Chuck E. Cheese animatronics. So that Choo Choo character that was in that little tree stump got changed into Munch Jr. inside of a little metal barrel. He sat on the floor next to the character Mr. Munch, who he resembled a lot. He was basically a smaller version of Mr. Munch, except with only one tooth and a little orange propeller hat. Munch Jr. also didn't really have much of a body, because like I mentioned before with Choo Choo, Munch Jr. just sat in this little metal barrel and bobbed up and down to the music. He didn't really do much, but he was still an important part of the band. Well, maybe not important enough, because sadly in the mid-90s, a lot of Chuck E. Cheese locations actually started removing Munch Jr. So many, in fact, that it got to the point where only one Munch Jr. animatronic was left at a public Chuck E. Cheese's, which was in Wilmington, North Carolina. And you may be thinking, well, this is the end of the story, right? You did mention at the beginning of the video there's only one Munch Jr., and you just said right now there's only one Munch Jr. in Wilmington. But no, sadly, in 2020, there was actually a leak in the air compressors, and this location did end up shutting down, meaning that this Munch Jr. was also gone, leaving 0 left. He was pretty much just gone from the spotlight, you know, all the animatronics being gone. However, just a year prior, in 2019, he actually did make a few appearances in Chuck E. Cheese songs. He appeared in the song Zorba Glorb Dorba, not as an animatronic, but instead as a puppet. We also learned some pretty interesting lore about Munch Jr. in this, which is that he's actually one of Mr. Munch's younger siblings, which he apparently has hundreds of. He also appeared in a couple other songs, like the Song of Summer, but he didn't really have a big role in that. You could kind of barely see him in the corner. And this seemed like the end of the road for Munch Jr. All the animatronics are gone, they stopped making songs featuring his puppet, so he's kind of just gone. But then the craziest thing happened. In 2022, just a year ago at the time of making this video, Munch Jr.'s extinction ended. Munch Jr. was reborn. Once again in North Carolina, except this time in Charlotte, the tech guy at one of the Chuck E. Cheese locations actually made a new Munch Jr. animatronic. It's referred to as like a replica Munch Jr. because although it is like actually a thing at a Chuck E. Cheese location, it's not the original one from the 90s, it is a new one that he made. And I actually did get the chance to speak to this guy, so I will talk about him a little later in the video, so stay tuned for that. And now, once again, there is a single Munch Jr. animatronic left at a Chuck E. Cheese location. Coincidentally, again, in North Carolina. Hearing about this, I of course wanted to see Munch Jr. himself, so me and my girlfriend decided to strap in our seatbelts and drive over 5 hours to go see him.
Okay, so we're here. We just finished driving 5 hours, like 300 miles or something. We're in North Carolina, and over there, behind the tree, is the Chuck E. Cheese. So let's go inside and see our boy.
What are you doing?
Shaky cheese.
So there it was, we finally made it to this location with all of the animatronics. They performed really well, and Munch Jr., of course, in his little barrel, just sitting on the floor. All of the animatronics worked really well. Like, you see Mr. Munch singing, you've got Jasper just kicking his feet, you've got this building animatronic, which I didn't even know existed, and also a moon, which was really cool. The animatronics were all awesome, but there was one thing. Munch Jr. just kind of stayed in his little bucket the entire time. Right here, I actually was voicing over, but there was music, so I decided to dub it over just in case there's copyright. But basically what I'm saying is that we got to talk to a tech guy who said that he could actually bring up Munch Jr. for us manually. It's the guy I'll talk to in a bit. So that was really cool, and I was really excited to be seeing Munch Jr. And then there he is, Munch Jr. finally getting out of his bucket, showing himself to the world, bopping up and down. It was really cool to be seeing him in person finally after all this time. It was really cool. It was really nice of that guy to actually let us see him, bringing him out, because, you know, during the songs we didn't get to see him, but now we got to see him, which was awesome. We got Munch Jr. along with the rest of the gang now. Here's the whole band
pretty sweet. I got to meet Munch Jr., such a strange animatronic. Yeah, I drove over 5 hours to get here, mostly to see Munch Jr., and it was really cool. And speaking of Munch Jr., let's get back into it, talking about the magical man himself that created the replica.
Like I mentioned before, I actually got a chance to speak to the guy that made Munch Jr. Basically what happened is we saw this dude like open up a panel on the floor, and he was like showing a kid that he can like manually control the Chucky animatronic. So my girlfriend said to like go talk to him, see if he knows anything about the animatronics. So I went over and asked him if he knows anything about Munch Jr., and he was like, yeah, I made him. So that was a huge surprise. I definitely did not expect to be meeting the dude that made Munch Jr., but it was pretty cool. When I was doing the research for this video, I actually thought that the Munch Jr. animatronic was made by a whole team of people, because that's what the Wikipedia said, but apparently it was just him. Apparently he like made a replica of the mechanisms in Munch Jr., then he 3D printed a mask for it, airbrushed it, put on all the fur and everything, and he just made Munch Jr. again. So that's pretty sick. Munch Jr. is back at it again, bopping up and down to the beats. Although, not much. The unfortunate news is that he did tell me that they don't program him very much. Like, he's not actually put into many songs. I was there for, I'm sure, over an hour, and he didn't come up a single time. The only reason I actually got to see him moving up and down is because the dude actually went up into the back and put him up manually, so that was pretty cool. But the uncool thing is apparently the people that program the animatronics don't actually put Munch Jr. in many of them. He's just in a few of them, and apparently just at the end of the songs, and then he just bops up and down like a few times and then he's done. So that sucks, but at least he's there. It was still really cool to be seeing Munch Jr. in person, especially after doing all this research for the video. I got very excited to see him.
This is a little off topic, but I do want to say that this place was so cool. All of the animatronics worked so well. It was like they were just made. The person that repairs them does a great job. It's the same person that made Munch Jr. I think that this is probably the best Chuck E. Cheese just out there. The performance was great, and he was actually telling us that it is a thing that happens where some people come like from across the country just to see the performance. I think it was awesome. Definitely want to go back eventually. I would definitely recommend going here if you live around the area. There were also some pretty cool games here that I've never seen, like this one where you're in a tube putting balls in a hole, and also one where you're running on a treadmill.
You look so goofy.
Yeah, that is about all the history we have about Munch Jr. This video is a lot different than the ones I usually do, so let me know if you guys enjoyed it. Usually I just make Five Nights at Freddy's stuff, but this time I decided to make Chuck E. Cheese video. But yeah, if this video ends up performing well, maybe I'll do more stuff like this, talking about some of the other obscure animatronics, or maybe the old stages or something like that. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But that is the end of the video, so if you want to subscribe, you can click the button on top of my head. If you want to see some of my other videos, you can click these buttons over here, and I'll see you if I ever do this again.